Ronpon and the Goat. Once upon a time, there was a man named Ronpon. Let's get his description out of the way now. He was tall and lean, with a bald head, which was totally by choice, thick brown eyebrows, a bushy brown beard, and hazel eyes that gleamed with curiosity. He didn't have to wear glasses or anything. His vision was perfect. And he was super handsome. He didn't have any weird freckles on his face, and the pores on his nose were tiny and not at all visible. He wore simple clothes, blue jeans secured with a black belt, a white crewneck t-shirt, and an unbuttoned red and black checkered flannel shirt, all highlighting his buff physique. He was slim but not skinny, you know? Like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, but more muscular. Anyway, back to the story. Ronpon was walking through a magical forest in fairyland, gazing out at the colourful foliage and breathing in the sweet forest scents. He wasn't sure how he'd gotten there, nor was he certain how he knew it was called fairyland, but he had a strong sense that this was where he was meant to be. The forest was a place of wonder, teeming with life and magic. Ancient trees with gnarled roots stretched their branches high into the sky, creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into a soft emerald glow. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the songs of birds filled the air with a melodious symphony. As Ronpon walked, he marveled at the beauty around him. He had always felt a deep connection to nature, and the forest seemed to embrace him as one of its own. Little did he know that his journey through these woods would lead him to an adventure unlike any other, one that would test his courage, wisdom, and compassion. As Ronpon trudged through the magical forest, he began to get a creepy feeling on the back of his neck. The once vibrant and inviting woods now had an eerie quality to them, with shadows stretching long and menacing across the path. The air grew colder, and the songs of birds were replaced by the distant howls of unknown creatures. Ronpon scanned the surroundings warily, his steps cautious on the uneven ground. Eventually he came across a clearing where he saw a goat trapped in vines. The poor creature struggled, its white fur matted with leaves and dirt. Ronpon's heart went out to the animal, and without hesitation he approached it. The goat's eyes, filled with a mix of fear and hope, met Ronpon's as he knelt beside it. "Easy now," Ronpon murmured soothingly, his hands working carefully to untangle the vines. The goat bleated softly, seemingly understanding that Ronpon was there to help. With patience and gentle effort, he freed the goat from its entrapment. The goat shook itself off, its eyes reflecting gratitude. Ronpon smiled and gave the goat a reassuring pat on the back. Then, to his surprise, it opened its mouth and began talking. "Thank you for freeing me," the goat said in a voice that was both gentle and wise. "But our troubles are far from over. This forest has been overtaken by a malevolent force, and if it is left unchecked, it will soon take over the entire forest, and soon after that, all of fairyland." Ronpon, his curiosity piqued and his determination solidifying, asked, "How can I help?" The goat's eyes gleamed with a mix of hope and urgency. "To restore balance and cast out the great evil, you must gather totems from the 4 elements, which can be found in the 4 corners of the forest. Fire to the north, water to the east, earth to the south, and air to the west. But beware, brave Ronpon, you must not sleep until your quest is complete, or you shall be lost to the darkness and become a minion of the great evil." "How do you know my name?" asked Ronpon. "Don't overthink it," replied the goat. "Now go, before it's too late." Though nervous, Ronpon felt a surge of determination. He knew he could not let the darkness spread. With a nod of resolve, he turned to the west, ready to seek the air totem, because that seemed like the easiest for some reason. The path ahead was uncertain, but his heart was steadfast. He set off into the deepening shadows of the forest, each step bringing him closer to his first great challenge. You prefer sci-fi? Head to my channel and check out the crew. Ronpon journeyed to the west side of the woods. As he left the tainted area, the dark and dreary atmosphere gradually lifted, giving way to the forest's usual cheerful and magical appearance. The oppressive shadows receded, replaced by beams of sunlight that filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. The air grew lighter and filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and fresh leaves. The further west he went, the more the forest took on the qualities of the air element. The trees became wispier, their branches swaying gracefully in a gentle breeze. Leaves shimmered with a golden sheen, catching the light and reflecting it in a dance of luminescent hues. The forest seemed to breathe with a serene and ethereal quality. More and more flying creatures appeared, adding to the enchanting atmosphere. Birds of vibrant colors flitted from branch to branch, their songs harmonizing with the rustling leaves. Delicate butterflies, with wings like stained glass, fluttered around Ronpon, creating a mesmerizing display of colors. Even the air itself seemed to sparkle with tiny motes of light, as if the very essence of the forest was alive and welcoming. It should have been quite lovely, but unfortunately, Ronpon had kind of a phobia when it comes to insects, so he spent most of the walk on high alert, swatting at anything that moved. He really hoped he'd find the air totem soon. After some time, he came across a clearing bathed in soft golden light. In the center stood a pedestal upon which rested a small ivory statue of a bird. Its intricate details glistened, reflecting the gentle glow of the surroundings. Beside the pedestal stood a tree, and perched on a delicate branch was a larger bird with vibrant blue plumage. The bird, the real one, that is, was asleep, its feathers rising and falling with each gentle breath. Ronpon approached, cautiously, the crunch of leaves beneath his feet barely disturbing the serene atmosphere. Hello? Ronpon called out, softly, as he neared the pedestal. Suddenly, the bird's eyes flew open, and it jolted awake, fluttering its wings in surprise.
Ah! Holy crap, you startled me! Who doth approach the air totem?
The bird squawked, quickly regaining its composure and attempting a more dignified stance. My name is Ronpon, said Ronpon. I'm here for the...
No,
interrupted the bird.
Thou speaketh too commonly. Thou art supposedeth to speaketh with gravitas, as this is a solemn occasion.
Then it rolled its eyes, which, if you haven't seen it before, is rather off-putting to see a bird do. Its expression clearly said, I don't make the rules. Oh, wouldst thou do me the honor of, giving it to me? The bird rolled its eyes again, but apparently that was good enough.
If thou wisheth to procure the air totem, thou must answereth mine riddle.
Ronpon was pretty sure the bird wasn't even using the fancy words correctly, but not wanting to offend the guardian, he bit his tongue. Very well, I am prepared, if... The bird cleared its throat.
I move the waves upon the sea. I rustle branches on a tree. I'm never seen, but always there. What am I? I'm everywhere.
Ronpon thought for a moment. A few answers sprang to mind. The air seemed too obvious, as this was the riddle for the air totem, after all. But then again, it talks about it moving, so it could be the wind. But even that sounded too obvious. Throwing caution to the... Ronpon offered a guess that he hoped was sufficiently specific. The breeze? The bird paused, clearly thinking it over. Then it sighed.
Well, I was going for the air, but I guess it was a bit ambiguous. The breeze works.
All attempts at fanciness had apparently been thrown out the window, and Ronpon could have sworn its accent changed. "Oh," replied Ronpon, surprise plain on his face. "Great, that's very reasonable of you."
Yeah, well, it wasn't the best riddle. Plus, they don't pay me enough to be too picky.
"Who's they?" the man asked.
Don't ever think it. Good luck, I'm going back to sleep.
And that is what it did. Ronpon, still rather confused, slowly walked over to the totem. Based on its odd behavior, he was a bit nervous that the bird wasn't actually the guardian, and was just an imposter playing a trick. But seeing nobody else, he cautiously lifted the totem from the pedestal. When nothing happened, he smiled, put it into his pocket, and began to walk towards the south side of the forest. It was time to find the earth totem. He hoped the earth totem would be as easy to acquire as the air one. If you want to support my work directly, you can go to patreon.com/Ronpon, but no pressure. Ronpon continued his journey, now heading southeast, the afternoon sun casting soft shadows around him. As he walked, the forest took on what could only be described as an earthier appearance. The trees grew thicker and sturdier, their roots intertwining with the soil in a display of ancient strength. Moss covered the ground in a lush green carpet, and mushrooms of all shapes and sizes dotted the landscape. The air was filled with the rich, loamy scent of the earth, mingled with the fresh aroma of leaves and damp wood. Ronpon marveled at the transformation as he moved deeper into the forest. The path became less defined, overgrown with ferns and low-hanging branches. The sound of rustling leaves and the occasional call of a forest creature added to the ambiance, almost helping Ronpon to forget about the bugs. Eventually, he came to the southernmost part of the forest. Before him lay an unassuming mud puddle. The scene seemed tranquil, almost serene, but there was an unsettling stillness to the air. Ronpon cautiously approached the puddle, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of the earth totem. As he neared the edge of the puddle, the ground beneath him trembled slightly. He took a step back, his heart racing. Suddenly, a large figure began to rise slowly from the depths of the mud. The figure took shape, its form emerging from the muck in a cascade of dripping earth. It was a mud golem, towering above Ronpon with a body made of thick, wet mud that dripped and oozed as it moved. Its glowing orange eyes fixed on Ronpon with an ancient, inscrutable gaze, and it stood there, imposing and silent, a guardian of the earth totem. Asked the golem. However, its speech was so garbled that Ronpon couldn't understand a word. "What?" asked Ronpon. Asked the golem. Again, it was incomprehensible. Ronpon began to get worried. "I'm sorry, I just can't understand what you're saying." Then the golem gave a look of muddy exasperation and spat out a big chunk of mud into the ground. "Sorry about that," it said, suddenly sounding perfectly normal. "It's been a minute since I've had to talk. I was saying, who goes there?" "Oh, I'm Ronpon." Lovely to meet you, Ronpon. I take it you're here for the totem. That's really the only reason anyone ever comes here." Well, yes," Ronpon replied, still taken aback by the sudden change. "Then you must answer this riddle." Ah. Ronpon had expected something of a different test this time, but hopefully this one would be as easy as the last. "Okay then, let's hear it." The golem paused. "Hang on, it's here somewhere." He stooped down and started fumbling around in the mud until he exclaimed, "Aha!" and pulled out a muddy parchment. He held it up, frowning, and tried to scrape the mud off of it to no avail. This could be a problem. It's okay, I think I can remember it. What is, if you take, Ronpon was growing impatient, but soon it came up with, what is an element that rhymes with birth? Ronpon's mouth fell open. That was even easier than the first one. It barely even constituted a riddle. However, knowing time was of the essence, he quickly answered, Earth. Very good, exclaimed the golem excitedly. I didn't think you'd get that. Congratulations. Here is the... He started patting his body as if it had pockets, before looking around again. One moment. Once again he fumbled around in the mud, before giving another great aha, and pulling out a small, muddy object. He held it out to Ronpon, who took it reluctantly. As the gross mud oozed off it, Ronpon saw that it was a small clay mushroom. Ronpon assumed it was the totem, but this golem seemed a bit out of it, so he asked for confirmation. Yep, that's it, replied the golem. Well done again with that riddle. Good luck. Then it unceremoniously splattered back into the mud. As he walked away, Ronpon marveled at how easy these riddles were. But, he supposed, most adventurers aren't exactly geniuses, so it made sense that the riddles had to be a little on the simple side for those more inclined towards swordsmanship than book reading. You can buy my mediocre nursery rhyme parody book on Amazon. Ronpon continued his journey, now heading northeast towards the east side of the forest, where he hoped to find the water totem. He hoped it would be as quick to obtain as the late afternoon sun was casting long, soft shadows through the forest, a subtle reminder of the time limit. He also found that the tainted area of the forest had expanded, further fueling his quest to put a stop to the spread of corruption. As he continued towards the east, he heard the gentle murmur of flowing water. Following the sound, he soon found a stream winding its way through the forest. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the dappled sunlight like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Delicate water creatures, some with wings and others with the translucent bodies of jellyfish, danced in and above the water, adding to the enchantment of the scene. The stream grew wider and more robust as Ronpon continued his journey. The gentle babbling turned into a more energetic flow, the sounds blending harmoniously with the rustling leaves and distant calls of forest birds. As the sun began to dip low over the horizon, casting a soft pink glow over the terrain, Ronpon emerged from the forest to find a beautiful crystal lake. The lake was vast and serene, its surface smooth and reflective like polished glass. Ronpon approached the lake, his eyes taking in the tranquil beauty before him. The shoreline was dotted with smooth stones and patches of soft grass, creating a comfortable and inviting space. As he neared the water's edge, he noticed movement in the shallows. There, just above the surface, was a mermaid. Her long hair cascaded down her back, down to her tail, which was covered in iridescent scales. Her tail flicked gently, creating ripples that spread out across the water.
Greetings, friend. Come here to me, and you will find what you see.
Ronpon was so taken aback by her beauty and charm, he didn't notice that she was speaking in rhyme, or, at least, she was trying to. He strode over to the water, and she spoke again.
Is it true, and am I right, that you were on a quest to find the water totem tonight?
Again, Ronpon was too distracted by her beauty to notice the inconsistent meter of her rhyme, and simply replied, Yes, please, that would be great.
No, silly, you need to say that in rhyme. That's how you make conversation.
She paused, then lit up.
Sublime!
She looked very proud of that one. Oh, this time, Ronpon paused. He tried to think of a word that rhymed with totem, but could only think of one that he would be far too embarrassed to say in front of the cute mermaid, so he changed tactics. A water totem's what I seek. That's why I followed yonder creek. Then he gestured to the river behind him. The mermaid smiled.
If the totem you would have, then this riddle you will have to answer.
This time Ronpon definitely noticed how terrible she was at rhyming. How could someone so insistent on the practice be so crap at it? He didn't bring it up.
Very well, I'm ready now to face this riddle said by thou.
Oh, the frickin' bird was rubbing off on him. The mermaid didn't seem to mind as she launched into the riddle. Ronpon couldn't help but notice how much better the rhymes were now that she wasn't making it up herself.
I fall from the sky, but not from grace. I fill your cup and splash your face. In clouds I form, and in seas I stay. What am I? Needed every day.
At this point, Ronpon wasn't even surprised. He quickly replied,
Water.
and barely noticed as the mermaid celebrated his intelligence. He just held out his hand and asked for the totem. She seemed a bit miffed that he wasn't all that impressed, but she quickly dove underwater and soon returned with a bright blue fish totem made of shiny glass.
Thank you,
said Ronpon, in a hurry to get moving again. The mermaid looked at him expectantly.
Since you gave this to me, I won't spank you.
The mermaid winked and looked like she was about to reply, but Ronpon was already on his way. He didn't have time to waste flirting, especially since her bottom half was a fish. It was evening now, and Ronpon was getting tired. The corruption had spread even further now, but as much as he wanted to hurry, his legs were too tired to run. So he maintained a steady pace as he headed towards the northernmost part of the forest. As he walked, the landscape began to change once again. The lush green foliage gave way to trees that were barer, their branches twisted and gnarled. Some looked charred, as if they had been scorched by an intense heat. The ground underfoot became dry and cracked, the scent of smoke faintly lingering in the air. Plus the mosquitoes got even worse, which drove him kinda nuts. He found himself looking around frequently. The evening sun created creepy shadows, and the bare trees made him feel exposed. If there was an evil force taking over the woods, the man trying to defeat it would probably be its first priority. Frankly, Ronpon was surprised he hadn't run into trouble yet, but as had been suggested to him several times already, he didn't overthink it.
I wrote a Christmas movie. Check out the storyboard on my channel.
Soon, Ronpon came upon a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a pit of bubbling lava, its fiery glow illuminating the area. The heat emanating from the pit was intense, and the air shimmered with the rising waves of heat. Dancing flames surrounded the pit, flickering and cracking with a life of their own. In the center of the lava pit stood a sinister-looking scarecrow. Its appearance was grotesque, with tattered clothing and a face twisted into a creepy grin. The scarecrow's softly glowing eyes seemed to follow Ronpon as he approached, giving it an eerily lifelike appearance. As Ronpon drew closer, the scarecrow suddenly burst into flames. The fire spread quickly, but instead of turning to ash, the scarecrow turned to face him. The glow of its eyes intensified with a malevolent light. The air was filled with the sound of crackling fire, and the now even more intense heat made Ronpon's skin prickle. The scarecrow stood there, a burning sentinel guarding the fire totem, its presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. An unsettling, otherworldly voice wafted through the air. "Who disturbs my slumber?"
Ronpon!
cried Ronpon.
I'm here for the fire totem!
He didn't have time to waste, as he had to get back to the goat and save the forest. That's a sentence you don't hear every day. "Very well," replied the scarecrow. "But first, you must answer my riddle. What has..." Taking a stab in the dark, Ronpon blurted out,
Is it fire?
There was a long, awkward pause. Then the scarecrow replied, "How'd you know that?"
Doesn't matter. Can I have the totem?
Ronpon could swear he heard the scarecrow muttering to itself angrily, but it reached into its pocket and pulled something out before throwing it at Ronpon. Then the flames went out and it returned to its original state. Ronpon caught the totem with one hand. Then he instantly regretted catching it, as the bright red metal dragon totem was scorching hot from all the fire. He quickly dropped it on the ground and blew on his hand to cool it. However, he was in a hurry, so once the trinket was cool enough to handle, he pocketed it and began his journey back to the goat. Night had fallen now, as Ronpon made his way back to the center of the woods. His path was illuminated by a torch he had taken from the fire pit, its flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows around him. The air was cooler now, the torch's warmth a small comfort in the encroaching darkness. As he walked, he began to notice further signs of corruption spreading through the forest. The once sturdy trees were now blackened, their bark cracked and oozing with a sticky, foul-smelling slime, and the air grew thick with an oppressive feeling. His eyes began to play tricks on him. Out of the corners of his vision, he swore he could see evil creatures lurking in the shadows, their malevolent eyes glinting in the torchlight. Every rush of leaves and snap of a twig made his heart race, but he couldn't afford to slow down. He was exhausted, his legs felt heavy, and his eyes burned with fatigue, but his fear and determination to save the forest spurred him forward. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the clearing where he had met the goat earlier that day. To his immense relief, in the center of the clearing, just as before, stood the goat. The goat's eyes widened in recognition as it saw Ronpon approach.
You made it back,
it said, its voice filled with a mixture of surprise and hope. Ronpon nodded.
And you have them?
In reply, Ronpon took the totems out of his pockets and placed them beside the goat.
This is wonderful. I had started to lose hope, worried that you might fail, that you might not arrive in time, that you may decide to keep them for yourself.
I wouldn't do that, replied Ronpon. That would be wrong.
Yes, it would also be smart,
said the goat, his voice suddenly markedly less cute. Huh? Asked Ronpon, eloquently. He was too tired to fully compute what the goat had said.
Do you really trust everyone you come across? I'll admit it must lead to a blissfully ignorant life, but also a short one.
It chuckled, sounding rather condescending. Huh? Ronpon's brain felt a bit foggy.
Did it never occur to you to question why I would be trapped in vines if I was some guardian of the forest?
Asked the goat.
Do you never stop and think before acting?
Suddenly, the goat convulsed and reared up on its hind legs. It bulged and contorted, growing larger and taking on a grotesque new shape. Its eyes glowed red, and it turned to Ronpon, who gazed on in fear.
You see, it was no accident that I got tangled up in those vines. The forest was fighting me, fighting my corruption. But you, sweet boy, released me. You heard my cries and helped without a second thought. Very admirable and very stupid.
Ronpon started shaking, frozen in fear at what stood before him.
However, I could never succeed in taking the entire forest without these totems, and I couldn't fetch them myself as they could only be taken by one who is pure of heart. Also, I suck at riddles. So I told you what had to be done, told a little lie about saving the forest, and told you to stay awake so the forest couldn't warn you in your dreams. And you were just so excited to help. It was almost too easy. Normally I'd want to tie up loose ends, but you've been such a gem I will spare your life. Goodbye for now, dearie. But should you ever return, you shan't leave again.
The goat gave a cackle and disappeared in a burst of black ooze. Ronpon was bewildered and embarrassed at having been so foolish. Had he really just doomed the forest rather than saved it? Had he actually helped the evil being attempting to take it over? He didn't get much time to ponder this unfortunate lesson, as his eyelids suddenly became unbearably heavy. His vision began to swim, and he barely had enough time to fall to his knees before losing consciousness altogether. To be continued. Special thank you to Neely, my one and only patron on Patreon. To everyone else, hope you enjoyed the video.